Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel Ray and today is another episode of Theory Tuesday!
Yay!
With Mr. Ray! Yay! I hope you all are doing well. Today is a very fun day for us because I'm starting a new diamond painting and it is roses and pomegranates. I got this from a store on Etsy called Blushing Blackbird, but they are no longer in business. It's quite sad. If you hear toe clicks, it's the dogs. They are a little rambunctious on this gloomy day.
It is so gloomy, yeah.
But this is a full crystal kit, James.
Full crystal?
Yeah, check it out. They're rhinestones. Even the black drills are rhinestone.
Every single one of them, really?
Yeah, every color is actually
Oh.
sparkly. So I'm gonna work on this while we're filming today, and then when we're finished, I'll actually turn off the light pad and show you all because, yeah,
Pretty cool.
It's gonna be a cool effect. You're not gonna see much while I'm diamond painting, and I do apologize for that, but it'll be fine. I'm also using these, I'm going to use these adhesive dots in my pen. I've heard a lot of good things. I've tried them a few times, but they're super duper sticky and they make a really loud popping sound. So I know a lot of you like that. Also, before we get started today, thank you so much for joining us in the premiere last week.
Oh yeah, thanks everybody. That was really a lot of...
That was so much fun.
It was my first premiere. I wasn't even sure what... You explained it to me several times, but I wasn't even sure what it was. Like,
yeah.
I was like,
what is going on here?
I type here?
Yeah, so we really enjoyed doing that, and hopefully we can do more like that in the future. Just stay tuned and we will let you know. And yeah, without further ado, we're going to get started. So what are we talking about today, James?
Well, as part of our whole Halloween run-up, I'm doing kind of Irish stories.
Okay.
You know? So we're doing, we're going to do a kind of a story from Irish history.
Ooh.
And it's fairly famous, and, you know, it's got a strong kind of Halloween theme and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of it, like. I don't really have anything else to say about it at the moment.
Ooh. It's
do you
a
want...
secret.
It's not that it's a secret. It's just I don't want to give too much away at the start, you know?
Yeah. A little bit of suspense.
Yeah, so do you want to... Will we just get into it?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So this story kind of takes place in the late medieval period in Ireland, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I guess we'll just talk about it. And it takes place in Kilkenny.
What would that have been like?
What do you mean?
Can you paint a picture for us?
In this particular place?
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by would I paint a picture.
Like medieval times in Ireland, what was that like? Just as like a quick kind of, so that we can understand what people were.
I mean, there wouldn't have been an Ireland as such. There would have been a lot of different kind of, it's a feudal society, obviously. Everywhere is feudal at this time, you know, in Europe. And it's, so there's a lot of kind of warlords and stuff like that. Yeah?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And our story takes place in the late medieval period. And at that time, and it takes place in Kilkenny. So a guy that we touched upon in the Loftus Hall story.
Yeah.
Do you remember about Loftus Hall was that last Halloween? Or?
That was last Halloween,
Yeah, the guy that we touched on there, Richard Leclerc, the 2nd Earl of Pembroke.
Okay.
Who they call Strongbow.
Oh, the cider guy.
Yeah, the cider guy, yeah. He features in this. So him and his friend Raymond Le Gros would have been the guys that invaded at Hook's Head in kind of the late 11th century, you know? Mm-hmm. Or sorry, 10th century. They would have, so at that time anyway, they invaded and they basically kind of took over a lot of areas in that place, and then Leclerc ended up marrying into a local family and stuff like that. I mean, I think if you want a bit more background on that, you can listen to the Loftus Hall one.
Google it. No, just kidding.
Listen to the Loftus Hall one. But Leclerc anyway he's the guy. They're Anglo-Normans, you know.
Yeah.
So strong ties to Britain. He's from Wales himself. But they all speak French because they're Norman, you know?
How am I supposed to get this glue dot inside the pen? Help! In the comments, help me. What am I doing wrong? Okay, continue.
It seems like that would be too sticky to do the job.
Well, you're supposed to use your finger oils.
Of course. To dampen the stickiness?
Yes, but like... Anyway, sorry. Keep going. You're fine.
So Leclerc and his buddies come over, and they're you know, they basically they're helping out a local king. Again, that's not important for our particular story. But at the time, Kilkenny had a, like, you know, in Ireland, like, kill, anything with kill in it means there's a church there. And Kilkenny is Kilcannig.
That must be very confusing.
Huh? Well, like, you know, anywhere like Killarney or Kilshamuck, you know? It just means a church. So Kilkenny was Kilcannig, you know?
Okay.
And there had been a cathedral there for ages, like started out as a monastery, and at this time it had been upgraded to a cathedral, yeah? And it was a place called Irishtown. And it became Irishtown because Leclerc came, and it's on the River Nore, you know?
Uh-huh.
It's right in the centre of... It's right in the well, not really the centre, but it's in the kind of centre-east of Ireland. And it has a river that flows through it called the Nore. And the Nore flows into the sea at Waterford, which is kind of Leclerc's area of power, you know?
Okay.
So he comes up and he builds Kilkenny Castle around about this time. It's the lowest fjording point of the Nore. And it becomes this huge, over the next, maybe like, I think he starts building that in 1173, you know? And it connects down to Waterford, and it becomes a massive trading town, yeah? And it goes through, like, over the next 100 years, it goes through such a boom. Like, you've got these two areas. You've got, like, Irishtown, which is the ecclesiastical settlement. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the castle, which is up on a height, and they call that Hightown. And Hightown is, like, almost, you know, the power of the state. Yeah?
Okay.
And they build a big castle there, and it goes through a huge kind of boom, and Kilkenny just becomes one of the most important settlements in Ireland for trading and stuff like that. Because, like I said, it's centrally located, and once you get to Kilkenny, you can trade there, you can put stuff on a boat, get it to Waterford, and then from Waterford, there's trading connections with kind of Britain, and there's also trading connections with the continent, particularly with France and Belgium, what's now Belgium and stuff like that. Because that's the seat of power of the Normans.
Right.
You know?
Got it. Okay.
So Kilkenny goes through this huge boom, and part of this huge boom is this family called the Kettlers. And the Kettlers are Flemish, which is in Europe where kind of Belgium is now. It's a part of Belgium now, you know?
Okay.
And they're a very, very successful kind of merchant family. Mm-hmm. They even have their own stately home called, like, Kettler House.
Is that, like, the girl with the pearl earring, kind of?
Like, that painting would have been much, much later, like. But,
oh, okay. Maybe.
But yeah, it's really a powerful place to do trading in Ireland, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said, the Normans have connections to Normandy and to the continent, but they also have big connections to Britain because they're Anglo-Norman, you know? So it becomes this powerhouse. The Kettlers move in, and then sometime in about... Are you all right?
I'm struggling so hard,
This is not working out, is it?
This is not... All right, I'm moving on.
Are you going back to wax?
Everyone's like, you know, glue dots are so great. Are they really? Are they? Okay. Yeah.
They really?
I just need. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Are we ready to continue?
Flemish. The Flems.
Yeah, they're a Flemish family, and like I said, they're traders. And then, like, around about, I think, well, in about 1262, Alice Kettler is born to this family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know, she's actually the only child of this family, which I think at that time would have been pretty rare. So Alice Kettler is born into this powerful family, and by what is it, by 1280, she gets married to another guy, a guy called William Outlaw. Yeah?
Wow, what a name.
Yeah, the names in this story are amazing. That's kind of why I'm doing it. The first time someone told me this story, I didn't believe them. Because the names. So William Outlaw is, again, he's an Anglo-Norman, you know?
That was Paduax. SS.
He's an Anglo-Norman. And he's about 38 and she's 18 when they marry. Yeah?
Jeez.
I don't know if it was that rare, you know, but basically they were in the same kind of social strata.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Ow!
Like the Outlaw family at this time are incredibly influential and politically connected in Kilkenny.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like Outlaw himself, William Outlaw himself, he's a merchant, but he's also what they call a money lender. But at that time, a money lender basically would have been, I guess, the equivalent of what we would call a bank. He had so much money that he could loan this money to people. You know?
Yeah.
So incredibly rich family. His brother, William Outlaw's brother, is a guy called Roger Outlaw, and Roger Outlaw is, oh my goodness, my notes. Roger Outlaw is the prior of the Knights Hospitaller in Ireland. Do you know what the Knights Hospitaller are?
Nope.
The Knights Hospitaller, do you know the Knights Templar?
Yes.
And do you know their connection with the Crusades and stuff like that?
Yes.
Around about this time would have been the time of the Third Crusade, you know, which is the final crusade. And the Knights Hospitaller are usually called, like, they're sometimes called like the Knights of St. John of Malta or the Knights Hospitaller of Malta. Do you know St. John's Ambulance? Or sometimes called the St. John of Malta Ambulance Service?
No.
Anyway, they're related to the Knights Hospitaller.
And they were in Ireland, isn't it?
They're an international thing. They're very similar to the Knights Templar. They're based in Malta, and they would have provided services to people that were going to the Holy Land. They would have taken part in crusades and stuff like that. They're a big religious, ecclesiastical, but also political structure, you know?
Right. Okay.
And William's brother Roger is the prior, so the head of the Knights Hospitaller in Ireland. Yeah? Okay. William's, another relation of William Outlaw is the Sheriff of Kilkenny for a period of time. If you can imagine that, a sheriff called Outlaw, that is just almost like. Alice and William have one child during their marriage, and his name is William Outlaw as well.
Right. Junior.
William Outlaw Jr. When William Outlaw Jr. is in his early 20s, like 21 or 22, he becomes the mayor of Kilkenny. Like I said, the family are just incredibly well connected, incredibly, what would you say? They're incredibly well collected. They're incredibly influential in the area, you know? Like they are big cheeses, yeah? She's married to Outlaw for about 5 or 6 years. And sometime around about 1285, William Outlaw Sr. passes away. You know?
Okay.
She's left with inheritance. And then within about a year or maybe less, she's married to a second guy called Adam LeBlond. Yeah. Adam LeBlond is another, what they call a money lender.
Okay.
Again, very successful, obscenely rich.
Right.
You know? As a matter of fact, right after they're married, it's claimed, or there's a record of them having £3,000 in cash in their house.
Wow.
Which at the time would have been the equivalent of 7 million. Like for in today's money, 7 million euros, you know?
Having 7 million.
Yeah. Like, and they're involved in all sorts of things. Like, for instance, at the time, the average wage for a labourer was 1.5 pennies a day.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had £3,000 just lying around the house. And like I said, your man William Outlaw, he's the mayor at this time of Kilkenny, yeah?
Okay.
A lot of weird things happen during this marriage, like. So they get married in 1302. And then by 1307, Adam le Blond has done a thing called a quitclaim to his stepson, who's William Outlaw. And a quitclaim is a legal document where you quit all claim to your possessions. He's basically handed over all of his wealth to William Outlaw.
Wow.
Yeah. And this includes like all of his goods, his businesses, his jewelries. Also, at the time, William Outlaw owed him money that he had borrowed from him, and he basically wrote that debt off. So he's handed everything over to William Outlaw, who's Alice Kettler's son. Yeah?
Yeah.
He dies mysteriously a short while after this. His family are not impressed.
No.
That is in 1307.
Okay.
By 1309, Alice Kettler, who's in her, I would think around about early 30s at this stage, she marries another older guy called Richard de Valet.
Uh-oh.
Yeah? And Richard de Valet is another Anglo-Norman. He owns huge amounts of land in County Tipperary, which is just beside County Kilkenny, you know? They're living down there. He doesn't last very long either. As I said, he's a bit older than her as well. But I don't know if that was that unusual at the time, you know?
Yeah.
So he's a bit older than her. And he passes away in 1316. Yeah? So they're married for approximately 7 years.
Okay.
When he passes away, Alice Kettler takes the family to court for withholding her widow's dowry. Like, this is a legal amount of money that the widow of someone is entitled to. She wasn't included in the will. But she takes them to court, she sues them, and she gets her dowry. She gets the money that she's entitled to, which I believe is about 1/3 of the estate of the person that's passed away.
Right.
Yeah? This, obviously, really annoys Richard de Valet's kids.
Yeah.
Yeah? Within a few months, she's married to a guy called John Lapoire.
Another rich dude, I'm assuming.
John Lapoire is another obscenely rich guy. He is, again, another massive landowner. Yeah? He's actually Sir John Lapoire, so he has a landed title. He has a shot of kids from past marriage as well, where his wife has passed away.
Okay.
This is where the historical context changes a little bit as well. During this time, during their marriage, or just before their marriage, a thing happens in Ireland called the Bruce Campaign. And the Bruce Campaign is where the Royal House of Scotland at the time, the Bruce.
I was just about to ask, yeah.
Yeah, it is the Bruce. Yeah, the ones these are the guys from Braveheart, the Bruce. Yeah, the Bruce at the time invade Ireland just the year before their marriage, and they invade at Larne in kind of in Antrim there, you know. So they invade up there, they siege Dublin, they end up, I believe, sieging Kilkenny. One of the places they invade is actually this peninsula that we're on ourselves here. And they also lay siege to Kilkenny. They're around the place harassing. You know, when you've got a massive army and stuff like that, like they've got to eat and stuff, so they're raiding farms and they're taking food, you know?
Yeah.
This puts an awful lot of pressure on a place that was previously a boomtown. Yeah? At the same time as her marriage to John Lapoire, pestilences start to sweep through the countryside.
Uh-oh.
You know, there's a series of sicknesses that kind of wipe out whole herds of cattle, that start to affect horses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like at that time, those animals are your wealth.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So as she marries John Lapoire, hard times start to hit the countryside, you know? Now, Lapoire, again, is older than her. But he is probably the most powerful and wealthy of all of the husbands she's had so far. They have a large house. They have a lot of people working for them, you know? One of the people that they have working for them is a woman called Petronella de Meath.
What is her name?
Petronella de Meath.
Wow, what a name.
Petronella from Meath. So
Petronella.
Petronella de Meath, yeah. Huh. And Petronella, when she starts working for them, she's fairly young. She's like 16 or 17, you know. There's not a lot written about her. She's just a maidservant, but the two of them were pretty close, you know. Okay. And she, Petronella de Meath as well. Anyway, well, hang on. John Lapoire is as I said older than her, you know. Yeah. And after a couple of years of marriage, 4 or 5 years of marriage, he starts to go downhill pretty quickly. Oh. He starts to feel ill. He starts to feel a lot weaker. I couldn't really ascertain what age he was, but he starts to make accusations that she is poisoning him for his money. You know? Yeah. Let me see if I have any other...
Getting major Black Widow vibes.
Yeah, he starts to say, oh, well, you know, maybe I wouldn't be as sick if I didn't have such a dodgy wife or whatever, you know? And he passes away shortly after that. Yeah, he passes away shortly after that. Her and William inherit a sizable chunk of his estate. Okay. At the same time as their marriage and as the Bruce campaign, another arguably more important person comes into the story. Or an important person. Okay. Now, do you remember at the start we were talking about how there was the church and then there was the castle, you know? Right. During this period, during the late medieval period, there had always been a flow about where the power in society lay, particularly during the medieval period, because the church was all powerful, you know? Yeah. Like, at the start of the medieval period, you belong to the church, you know? Like, this life is a short one, but your eternal life, that's the church is in charge of that, right? You know? Right. And if you get on the wrong side of the church, you will not have eternal life, you know? Like, all of these things, like that you are baptized correctly, that you're buried correctly, that you follow proper strictures, I guess you would say, they are important in your journey to heaven. Because all of the average, like all of the working class people, let's say, although that's not really the serfs, you know? Yeah. They live hard, very difficult lives, you know? And they all want to get to heaven. Yeah. Yeah? But during this period, there was always a to and fro between where the real power was, you know? Was it the state, which is the king or queen, or is it the ecclesiasticals, like the pope and the bishops and stuff like that, you know? Yeah. And by this period, by the late medieval, they had kind of come to an agreement where the state would be in charge of temporal, you know, life, and the church would be in charge of spiritual life. And there was various agreements between them. It was codified by this point, you know? Okay. Like in 1258, Pope Alexander IV, he had legislated, like, with kings, you know, to make inquisitions legal. And this was in 1258, yeah? Yeah. So if you were accused of heresy against the church, you can be prosecuted at an inquisition, and that's legally binding. Yeah? Yeah. There was another law passed. I don't have my... Let me get my notes. There was another law passed then as well in 1139, and that was that laying hands on any cleric was considered a crime for any reason, you know? Yeah. Like you couldn't threaten a cleric, you couldn't...
No touchy.
Yeah, any of these. And there was a lot of these rules, and they had kind of codified and they had come to agreements, you know? Yeah. Alexander passes away, And then this guy, Pope John the 12th, takes over. Yeah?
Yeah.
And Pope John the 12th is obsessed with witchcraft and sorcery.
Ooh.
Yeah? And he creates this...
What's his name again?
Pope John the 12th.
Pope John.
Yeah. Pope John takes over in 1316. The same period as the Bruce campaign, the same period as her marriage to Lepoire is starting, yeah? So he takes over, and he is absolutely frightened of witchcraft and sorcery. He thinks that witchcraft is coming to get him personally.
Yeah.
You know? So he writes a papal bull. It's like the first action he takes when he gets into office, yeah? He writes a papal bull, and that says that witchcraft is considered heresy. Up until this point, witchcraft was kind of considered superstition at best. Or maybe it's useful because some of these herbs really do cure these illnesses, you know?
Right.
That sort of way. So he releases a papal bull, and he says that, no, from now on, witchcraft, it's basically a type of occult thing. And getting into witchcraft or getting into stuff like cunning, you know, like a cunning woman or whatever, and getting into all of these things, they are the slippery slope that leads to the devil.
Okay.
So he makes witchcraft a part of heresy. And heresy is a crime that can be prosecuted, you know? John also wants to get a little bit more hardcore.
Okay.
So he appoints a new bishop to Kilkenny. He appoints a guy called Richard Ledred.
Ledred.
The names are brilliant, aren't they?
Jeez.
He appoints a guy called Richard Ledred. Richard Ledred is probably from... It seems like he might be from Somerset in England. But Ledred is hardcore. So in 1316, Pope John the 12th appoints Ledred to be the Bishop of Ossory. And Ossory is where Kilkenny is, you know?
Okay.
So Ledred comes into town, yeah? And he's like a sheriff. He is going to clean up this town, you know?
Yeah.
So he starts cleaning it up, yeah? One of the first things he does is he's like, right, I do not like the way my clerics are behaving, you know? Like, you took vows, so I want to see you, like, get with this humility program. Yeah? No more big ostentatious, like, wearing all the stuff, parading through town. No more, like, wearing all the gold rings and getting people to kiss them, you know?
Come on.
The priests are like...
the best part of being a cleric.
That's the best part of being a cleric, yeah. So the clerics are like, I don't like it, but I guess it's okay. And then he says, cool. Also, no more concubines. They go bananas. They do not like that at all. He has to lay off a load of clerics, you know?
Oh.
And basically he comes in, he's hard charging, and he's like, no more of this crap, yeah?
Yeah.
So at the time he's coming in, he's all hardcore, yeah? He starts getting approached by the children of Richard de Villiers.
Okay.
Hang on, is it Richard de Villiers? He starts getting approached by the children of Richard de Villiers and Adam Leblond, yeah?
Okay.
And they're saying, listen, this woman, Alice Kettler, she murdered our father for his money, and she used witchcraft to do it.
Oh.
And the bishop is like, well, do you have any proof? And they're like, well, he was fine and healthy. He marries her. Suddenly, he's signing all his property and everything over to her son. And he's passing away in mysterious circumstances. Do you know?
Yeah.
Within a while. The bishop says, okay, leave it with me. I'll look into it. Yeah? And he starts looking into it. And as it starts to go, as people start to talk, you know?
Yeah.
All of these past children of her past husbands start coming out of the woodwork and going to the bishop and saying, no, definitely witchcraft. Now,
Wow.
the crack with this, because I read this in one of the articles and I thought it was really interesting, was that at the time, people that were accused of murder, if they were This isn't that different from us now. Like, ordinary people accused of murder often didn't get a trial, you know?
Right.
Like, if it was strong enough, the guys would just rock up and take you into custody, and that would be the end of you, you know? If you were rich enough, you'd get a trial.
Yeah.
And at about 65% of the trials or higher, that person was acquitted. So it was very hard to prove murder at the time, or very hard to get legal satisfaction through the secular route.
Okay.
So the thinking is that they started accusing her of witchcraft because this guy loves a bit of witchcraft. Like, he's the hammer of witches. His boss, John the 12th, he loves a bit of witchcraft and trying to root it out, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here as well, or it seems to be going on here. I suppose also it is important to point out that she probably did do away with some of these husbands. Do you know? I read in one place that the last guy, John the Player, that according to a lot of the stuff that's written, like that his hair was falling out and that he was this and that and whatever it was, you know, written by clerks of his house and stuff like that, people that worked in his offices and various businesses and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, from their testimony and what they're writing, it does look like he was actually poisoned. But it's important as well to draw to say that if he was poisoned, it would have been with a poison that they had probably made themselves from herbs and stuff.
Yeah.
And that at that time, that's the kind of stuff that the church was trying to police as witchcraft.
Yeah.
So there was a definite line between them. Yeah? Okay. So this goes on for quite some time. Yeah? And Ledred is, for a number of years, hearing people come to him and petition him for Alice Kettler's as being guilty of witchcraft and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah? So after a while, he draws up a list of charges. Yeah? And let me just come back to my notes. So he draws up a list of charges, yeah? And there are 7 charges in all. And the charges are that 1, she denied Christ in the church. 2, she cut up living animals and scattered their pieces at a crossroad as an offering to a Demas called Artus Filius and Robin Arterson.
That's very specific.
It sure is. That she stole the keys of a church and held meetings there at night.
Oh.
That she used the skull of a robber to mix potions.
Wow.
Yeah. That Alice had a carnal relationship with an incubus.
Okay.
That she sought the advice of Robert Arterson and Artus Filius on matters of witchcraft. And that she used sorcery to murder her husband and to infatuate others, with the result that they would sign their possessions over to her son William. So these are the 7 charges.
Okay.
Yeah? And he's like, right, I've got my charges. I've got the people that are accusing her. I better just really jump on this, you know? So, like I said, all of these guys are dead. You know, all of her husbands are dead.
Yeah.
It's 1324, and he decides, right, I'm going to take action. So he writes to the Chancellor of Ireland, who's like the representative of the king, you know, in Ireland. He writes to the Chancellor of Ireland and he says, I need to arrest this lady for heresy. And the Chancellor of Ireland says, what? And he says, I have evidence right here. I have lots of witnesses. I need to arrest this lady for heresy. And the Chancellor goes, nah, I don't think so, mate. And then he says, are you refusing to carry out an order from the bishop? From a bishop, like? And he said, well, he said, heresy isn't really a crime as such, you know? And the guy goes, you know, are you refusing to carry out an order from the bishop? And he said, no, I'm not. He said, I'm just interested in the proper procedure. So tell me, has this lady been excommunicated? And he says, no, she hasn't. He goes, oh, well, you're going to need to excommunicate her before I can arrest her, because that's the law. And he goes, okay, I can excommunicate her. And he goes, that's grand. He goes, also, I will need some charges against her, like not just like ecclesiastical charges. I need actual arrestable charges, and then I'll have no problem in arresting her. Yeah. And he says, fine, I think I can get those. Yeah? Yeah. And then the Chancellor of Ireland says, okay, so you can get both of those. And then there'll just be the 40-day waiting period. Genuinely. And the bishop says, the what? He goes, the 40-day waiting period. You know, you set it up, you do the thing, and then there's a 40-day waiting period.
Naturally. And
the bishop was like, oh, my giddy aunt.
Sounds like modern Ireland. Huh?
So the bishop goes off, right? Yeah. Ledred goes back down, and he tries to find Kettler to arrest her. Yeah. And he can't find Kettler. Surprise. She has disappeared. And he writes to the Chancellor again. And he says, listen, Roger, I can't find Kettler. What's going on there? And then Roger says, I don't know. And then the bishop says, aren't you Roger Outlaw? Kettler's brother-in-law from her first marriage? And he went, I might be. And then the bishop goes, okay, well, you, sir, are hiding a heretic. And he accuses Outlaw of hiding a heretic and aiding and abetting a heretic, yeah? Yeah. This goes on for months. Like, I had to streamline so much of this. This goes on for months, like, and they have a royal commission, and Outlaw is acquitted of the charges. Now, the thing is that probably Outlaw did, because as soon as he got the letter, Outlaw got the letter, he probably sent a letter to Kettler saying, I'm going to play this guy out for a while, but you need to get out of Kilkenny because he wants to arrest you for heresy, like, and I don't know, something's going to happen. So he probably did tell her. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that Ledred, because he's so hardcore, is incredibly unpopular. And there's like statements in the court where one guy is saying, there's this jumped up ruffian come over from England and he's accusing all of us of heresy. Like, he's literally pointing at one of the most successful women in Kilkenny and saying, heretic. He's pointing at that guy saying heretic, you know? Yeah. Like, this is the country that used to be called the land of saints and scholars, and we've got some jumped up Norman guy coming over here telling us we're all heretics. Yeah. So he's incredibly unpopular. So basically, Roger, this isn't even the first time this is the first time, but it's not the last time that he tries to accuse Roger Outlaw of being a heretic, and it fails. He does it so many times. So the bishop is really, really annoyed because he knows that Outlaw has helped Kettler, yeah? Yeah. So he's like, look, you're helping her out. This is terrible. What's going on? Yeah? Mm-hmm. And he goes to the Justice of Ireland, and who's above, he's kind of the judicial head of the state. You know what I mean? Okay. He goes to the Justice of Ireland and says, listen, this Roger Outlaw guy is dead against me. He won't cooperate, and I'm trying to root out these heretics, you know? Mm-hmm. And the justice goes, yeah, you know, and I'm going to tell this to you one more time, Richard. You need to excommunicate her. She needs to be excommunicated for 40 days. You need to have civil charges. That is how the process works.
This is the law.
Yeah, so Ledred straight away excommunicates her. Yeah? Okay. And then he goes to, at this point as well, he's accused Kettler and William Outlaw. Yeah? Mm-hmm. He's also accused several people in their household. But all of the people in the household, Petronella de Meath gets accused. Mm-hmm. Petronella's son, whose name they don't record, but who's only about 4 or 5, he gets accused. Wow. Loads of people that work on the farm, that work in the garden, just ordinary working people that work in this household, they all get accused as well. In total, there are 10 people accused. Yeah. Kettler is nowhere to be seen.
You are a heretic. You are a heretic.
That's what's going on. So they've done all this. She's absolutely disappeared. They can't find her anywhere. He's excommunicated her, and now he needs civil charges. Yeah. So he goes down to her house again with a big bunch of lads. Yeah. And he tries to arrest William Outlaw. Yeah.
You say yeah a lot.
I know. Because I should really. William Outlaw is really annoyed. Yeah?
Yeah.
And like I said, these are incredibly powerful and well-connected people in this area. Yeah? William Outlaw contacts his brother-in-law, or his former brother-in-law, who would be Arnold de Puer, John de Puer's son.
Yeah.
He is the Seneschal of Kilkenny.
Is that mayor?
The Seneschal he's the guy that's the representative of the king in that particular area.
Okay.
Beware the perfume Seneschal. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the representative of the king in that area. It's Arnold Le Puer, yeah? Yeah. Arnold Le Puer, whose father, John Le Puer, was the guy that was killed. A split at this time is happening in the Le Puer family, as far as I can see. You know, because there's two branches of Le Puer, which is Power now, which is the surname Power. Oh. This seems to be one of the things that causes the split, you know?
Yeah.
Because his family are one of the people that are accusing. Before Ledred can get to Outlaw's house, Arnold Le Puer arrests him. So he imprisons the judge for 17 days. Or he imprisons the bishop for 17 days. The bishop is extremely annoyed. Like, he's extremely annoyed. And he talks about this ecclesiastical decree that forbids the laying of violent hands upon a monk or cleric. Yeah. And all this. Le Puer, Arnold Le Puer's, he has an uncle. And Arnold Le Puer's uncle is also a bishop. Yeah? Okay. And then after a while, Le Puer's uncle, the bishop, starts going, Arnie, come here. This is a bit on the serious side. Like, I don't know how much of this is going to wash out if you don't pull back pretty soon, you know? Mm-hmm. So Le Puer says, okay, why don't you go down and release him, you know? So Le Puer gets his uncle, who's a bishop, to go down with Ledred's finery, like all of his fine clothing. Yeah. And he hands him his clothes, like his finery, you know? And he says, look, we've got a bunch of clerics and a load of lay people outside. So why don't you slip onto your vestments, you know? Mm. Slip these vestments on. And then they leave the prison in fine, what would you say, regalia, in a kind of a, you know, like a procession, if you will. Okay. Yeah? This does not make Ledred happy. Mm. Like, he's proper angry now, you know? He's so angry, and he wants this heretic thing to be done, you know? So he charges down to Alice Kettler's home, or the former home that she shared with John Le Puer.
Before she got out of there.
Yeah. And he grabs Petronella de Meade. Yeah? Now, within a short period of time, he has his charges against her, his civil charges, because she starts to sing like a canary, you know? She says that she had witnessed witchcraft on several times. Yeah? That she'd witnessed witchcraft. So look, here's one of them, like, so on one of these occasions, by a crossroads outside of the city, we made an offering of 3 cocks to a certain demon called Robert Artisan. He was from the depths of the underworld. She poured out the cock's blood and cut the animal into pieces and mixed it with intestines, spiders, and other black worms like scorpions. We mixed it with a herb called milfoil, as well as other herbs and some horrible worms. And then we boiled it in a mixture, boiled it in a pot with brains and the clothes of a boy who had died without baptism. And we mixed it in in the skull of a robber that had been decapitated. And that's how they call the demons. She also says other things as well. Like, she says that that she had witnessed your one poisoning her husband. Le Poire, yeah?
Okay.
That another time she had witnessed, this is basically all of the 7 charges. Like she starts to sing to these charges. She says at one stage as well that when she was in the house, that a black cat showed up. And then the black cat changed into Robert Arterson. And then that she saw Robert Arterson and your one have carnal knowledge of each other.
Ooh.
Another time she said that 3 black men carrying large iron rods showed up at the door. Mm-hmm. And when they were let in, they turned into Arthur Robertson. Or Robin Arterson.
Okay.
But basically she sings to the whole lot. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, even in this time in 1324, people started saying, but you beat her. Like she was tortured to confess these things.
Yeah.
And then the bishop says, no. She confessed the things.
And then
she was beaten as a punishment. At this, so now he has all of his charges, you know.
Okay.
And basically, the guys have got to do something. They've got to make an arrest. Yeah. So they do make an arrest. They arrest Outlaw. They arrest Petronella de Meath. They never find Alice Kettler. Alice Kettler has actually left, and she's taken Basilla, who is the daughter of Petronella de Meath. She's taken her. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a big trial. Yeah. And some people that were kind of, that the charges weren't so serious upon, they get to do penance. Like, they can pay their way out of it if they're rich enough, or they can say prayers and stuff like that, to kind of get away with it. So William Outlaw is accused of heresy, perjury, usury, adultery, and clericide.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he's accused of all of those things. Yeah?
Yeah.
Multiple courts, even though he's been arrested and all of these people are in jail, multiple courts refuse to hear this case. I think because they don't want to get in between all of these. Yeah?
Okay.
Eventually, Ledred, after like literally months and petitioning people in Dublin and stuff like that, eventually he gets a court to hear this case. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the court hears the case, and they convict William Outlaw, who's the main head guy that they have, because they don't have Kettler. Kettler's gone.
Right.
You know, so they convict William Outlaw, and William Outlaw gets a custodial sentence where he's put in prison. Yeah? Bearing in mind that he's the big guy. All of William Outlaw's powerful political friends, they come and start petitioning the bishop. And like he's even got people like bishops and clerical people going, Richard, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like Ledred by name, but you know what I mean? You could be a bit cool, dude. Do you know? So eventually Ledred is forced to capitulate and he has to commute Outlaw's sentence. So for all of this, Outlaw gets that he has to hear Mass 3 times a day for 1 year. That he has to give food to a certain amount of poor people within the town. Like he has to literally give them food for a year. Yeah?
Yeah.
And also that he has to re-roof the church, St. Canice's Cathedral.
Wow.
Which is the main cathedral. They even have a load of people who are in the same family as his, because like there's a lot of weird stuff like the Outlaw family who are his relations, but also the De Poires, who are very popular, or very popular is the wrong word, very powerful in this area. They all vouch for Outlaw that he will do it, and if he doesn't re-roof the church and do the masses and all that, like they will pay to have it done. So they almost act as bail guarantors. So Ledred doesn't get any satisfaction, you know.
Yeah.
Like Kettler's disappeared. William Outlaw is too powerful and too well connected to actually punish for the crimes that he's being accused of, you know. Namely, the main crime is that he aided and abetted his mother in the use of witchcraft so that he could prosper.
Yeah.
You know, but there are 8 other people in the case that are not well connected, that are just ordinary working people. You know, like they don't have essentials. They're not the nephew of the Chancellor of Ireland.
Right,
you know,
right.
So he goes hell for leather against these people. You know, and in the end, on the 3rd of November, 1324, Petronella the Meath is flogged through 6 parishes and burnt as a heretic in the centre of Kilkenny.
Oh my gosh.
On that day, the 3rd of November 1324. When I looked into the flogged through 6 parishes, what it actually is that the town has 6 parishes, so they would literally take her out in the centre of that parish where people would gather, give her a flogging, put her back on a cart, move her to the next area, take her out. It was public humiliation, you know?
Yeah.
And they moved her through all of these 6 parishes, and then they burnt her at the stake in the centre of Kilkenny.
Jeez.
This is the first time in Ireland that someone was accused of heresy and burnt at the stake. It might even be the first time in the Irish Isles, which, as you know, is Ireland, and then these other places, England, Wales, Scotland. So it is the first time in the Irish Isles where someone is accused, convicted, and burnt at the stake for heresy. There you go. And that is the story. It's actually interesting. I have a thing up here, and it's a quote from a professor of medieval history, you know?
Yeah.
And it says that witchcraft was a form of magic, and magic has always existed in one form or another. Popular medicines at the time were based on herbal preparations, which were made by witches. The idea of witchcraft as an inversion of Christianity, however, only came to the fore in the 11th and 12th century. So before that, they were just traditional. You know what I mean? It was like traditional herbalists and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were just.
And this is the period of time then when like I said, your man Pope Alexander, he ties Pope Alexander IV, starts up the Inquisition, and you know, you can be prosecuted for sorcery and witchcraft and heresy are all the same crime. You know, like that the taking part in traditional kind of stuff like that is tantamount to denying the power of Christ. You know, there's other interesting stuff as well. Like when the second time that Ledred goes to try and arrest Kettler, you know, do you remember? Like, first of all, he goes and talks to the Chancellor, who turns out to be her brother-in-law. And then he goes and tries to arrest her, but she's disappeared because he's probably told her that they're going to come and arrest you, get the hell out, you know?
Yeah.
So when he goes to do that, at that time he searches the house, and there is a found in her bedside locker, they find what they said was a staff and ointment. Now... The historian that I was reading said that this is probably a dildo. Yeah. And that there is a huge connection between
witchcraft and that sort of thing.
And sexually liberated women, yeah, exactly. And that you can't be having that sort of thing, you know. One of the things that they got Petronella de Meath to admit to as well was that they enchanted a broom and flew around at night. But that wasn't in the thing. Like, I think it's interesting, and I think, you know, this was 800 years ago, but not much has changed. Like the rich guys that were actually accused of it get away, and the people that don't have as much money or power, they're the ones that take the brunt of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
the fact that she was tortured and everything, publicly humiliated, just...
There was a... there's a draw between, or what am I trying to say? There's a tension between the two different types of legislative interests at this time in Ireland. There's the old Gaelic and Celtic lords, and they have a thing called the Brehon Law, you know?
Right.
And then there's the Anglo-Normans who had arrived about 100 years before this and taken over that area of the country, the southeast, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they have brought in Saxon and Anglo-Norman law, you know?
Yeah.
And those two things are different. Like, under Brehon law, women have as much right to inheritance as anybody else. Like, the wife has as much right to inheritance, a daughter has as much right to inheritance as anybody else, you know?
Yeah.
But not under Norman law. A wife can, it was very easy for a wife to divorce a husband in under Brehon law as well. It's one of these things as well, like a lot of people bring up Brehon law as being like particularly, what was you going to say? As being particularly good to women at the time. I don't know if it was, and maybe we're just projecting, you know, that kind of way. But it was definite. But it is definitely a fact that it was legislated for. Like, if you got married, yeah, and your husband couldn't perform his husbandly duties, or if you weren't, like, you could divorce him, no questions asked. You just would have to go to the feudal lord and explain the situation, and he would nullify the wedding, you know. And that'd be something like you've been married for 3 or 4 years and you don't have a kid or whatever, you know.
Right.
You could also divorce your husband if they became too fat. You know. You could divorce your husband if you felt that they could no longer protect you and your property. There was all these kind of things, but then under, and I guess, I just think it's kind of interesting to see things change, and I think it's, you know, like, I don't like Petronella the Meath is an interesting character as well, but there's like literally no information about her. She was about 22 years old when this happened, you know.
Wow.
And again, she was in no way charged with as serious a crime as William Outlaw, but William Outlaw just gets away with it, you know.
Right.
And then I think at that time as well, just like, because this was the thing that literally it took 2 or 3 years for this thing to go through. There was a lot of resistance on the side of the Irish apparatus of state at that time, you know. Like the Anglo-Norman guys were like, oh man, Richard Ledred is such a wet blanket, like, you know, chill out, Rich, you know. Yeah, don't accuse them of witchcraft. That's literally my brother-in-law, you know, that kind of way. So I think that's it. He also goes on, Ledred gets really, really annoyed, and after all of this happens, he tries to accuse Arnold Lapoyer of being a heretic. That doesn't work out, because he accuses Arnold Lapoyer, and then afterwards, again for a second time, accuses Roger Outlaw of being a heretic, you know?
Yeah.
And in both cases, it basically rocks up to the court, and everyone's like, I don't know, Ledred. I mean, I like him. I don't like you. So I guess your man Ledred goes on to be one of the longest serving bishops at the time. In 1356 he is still in power, like, and that's 50 years nearly of him being a bishop in the 1300s. At the time, a rumour starts to go around in 1356 that he's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
But at the time he was probably in his early 70s, which in the 1300s is quite an age to get to.
Yeah.
And I guess that's about it. That's the story of
he's the heretic.
The first woman in the Irish Isles that was burnt at the stake.
That's awful.
Isn't it terrible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Petronella.
There's there's a quote here from a professor of medieval history at Trinity University.
Oh yeah.
Bernadette Williams, and she says, if it was not for the witchcraft trials, people would scarcely be aware of Alice Kettler, you know?
Yeah.
And she was important because she was the first one. But how many other financially successful independent women were there in medieval Ireland that were accused of heresy just because? You know?
Yep.
She also said that it's important to note that even at this early time, there was a really strong sense of what the law was, how it existed, and how it was to be applied. You know? So I thought that was interesting. But anyway, I said, that is the story of the first,
first woman burnt at
burnt at the stake in Ireland for witchcraft. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a good story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The thing that got me about it was the first time I heard it, I just couldn't believe these names, like a sheriff called Outlaw, a bishop called Ledred.
That's pretty unique, all right.
Yeah.
So did they, whatever happened to Outlaw after that? Does it say? Or Ledred? Well, Ledred went on to stay alive.
William Outlaw.
But Outlaw, what happened to him?
Yeah, William Outlaw, he's doing the going to mass 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And he's donating, he has to feed a certain number of poor people within the parish of Kilkenny or Ossory and all that. But within a couple of months, people are already saying that he's not doing this, he's not feeding the people, and that they don't think he's going to mass and stuff like that.
Okay.
And he disputes that, and then after a year, he's been excommunicated as well. And then after a year, he considers his punishment to have been discharged.
Wait, he was excommunicated while he was meant to go to mass every day?
They were all excommunicated. All of them. They had to be excommunicated because that's what being a heretic is, you know?
Yeah,
but he was still excommunicated as he was being made to go to mass as part of his punishment. And he travels to Rome, or was it in Avignon? He travels to wherever the Pope is at this time.
Okay.
And has the Vatican rescind his excommunication. Like I said at the time, that was very important. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, it could literally break you and your family's ability to continue to be wealthy. Right?
Yeah.
So
I just thought it was, the other thing to kind of be mindful of as well is that during the medieval period, Ledred is really the start, he's a symptom of the start of the formalizing of the church in this period. At the time, if you were the abbot of what would you say, of a monastery, you know?
Yeah.
Or if you were whatever, the church very much acted like a feudal structure. So you would be the abbot of this monastery, you'd be under this bishop. Some of the alms and some of the goods that you produced at that monastery, you would have to kick up the line. You know what I mean?
Right.
Also, as a monk, the guy that's going to run the show next is your eldest son.
Oh, what? Wait, son?
Yes. There was no, in the early and middle medieval period, there was no sense of celibacy being one of the tenets of the church. That started to come in the period just before Ledred, you know?
Huh.
So it's a lot, the structure of it is a lot different than what you would think.
Funny how they can change the rules to suit them whenever they want.
Well, there's a really interesting book by a lady called Mary Condon. It's called The Serpent and the Goddess. Oh yeah, we have that. Yeah, it's a really interesting book, and it does a history of the medieval church in Ireland. And one of the things as well is that she said that there's, there wasn't really particularly a set doctrine. So basically anywhere you go, you were going to be submitting to whatever the local guy interprets as Christianity. You know, and it was during that period then in like the 8th, 9th and 10th century when the Vatican became more powerful.
Yeah.
In trying to impose doctrine, you know? But at the same time, if you're in Kilkenny, the Vatican is months and months travel away from you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But that's it anyway. That's the story.
Nice. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. That looks great.
So, trying to see if I can get it on camera. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. So these are opaque crystals. And I'll go back in and straighten them up a bit because they're not exactly on the symbol, but those reds and purples, that's going to look really good.
That's class.
And I'm sorry I couldn't get the glue dots to work. Really struggled. But yeah, thank you for sharing that story. That's really interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. Yeah, it is interesting.
I didn't realize that happened in Kilkenny, and yeah. The names on the story are quite
aren't they great?
Yeah.
I love it, like, yeah. Roger Outlaw.
We should change our name.
I knew a guy called Lawless.
Really?
Yeah, Lawless is a really popular name, yeah. It's just a cool name.
That's a cool name. Yeah.
John Lawless.
Isn't it Lucy Lawless?
Lucy Lawless, yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today as we talked about the thing that I didn't know about before we started this episode. And we will see you again. Will we be doing one next week or no? We're waiting. We're going to do a special Halloween episode. So you all will see a Theory Tuesday that will not be on a Tuesday, coming soon. Actually, I think it'll release on Halloween, which is a Monday. So look out for that new episode coming soon. It's going to be very special, and by popular request, a vlog style Theory Tuesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, exciting.
So thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed. Please take care and stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everybody!
Bye!